focus on best in class, there's a real delicate balance.
If you always put the client experience at the forefront, you will make good decisions.
When chaos hits, you need to have a playbook.
And here we are with a really fancy new intro. Welcome to the November Fireside Chat. One of the faces on the intro video might look familiar. Thank you, Net, for joining us again. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about incident response planning. We all know the importance of planning. We plan for retirement. I plan for vacations a year in advance because I'm a bit neurotic about it. We plan our businesses. We make 5-year plans. We also need to plan for incidents, for disaster. And so I've got 3 amazing experts on with me today, and I don't use the term experts lightly here. These are folks who have built them, used them, practiced them, all of the amazing things important around planning. So then I'll have them introduce themselves and we'll get started because we have a lot of ground to cover today. So, Net, can I get you to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me back. I'm Net Lynch. I'm the CISO at Kraft Kennedy and the Emperor of Legion, which is a division that I launched earlier this year focusing left of boom, doing security advising, assessments, pen testing, etc. Been around the MSP space for the last 20 years of my 30-year career. And I love the topic of client strategy, which includes all things security and technical advising.
And you managed to score an Emmy at IT Nation. Those are very coveted items.
I did.
Stuffed elephant?
I did.
I don't know if anybody on the call got one. I did not get one, and I'm still bugging the guys at Impact about it.
I have 4 courses, and I have 2 more waiting in the wings right now. So
okay, so I only have 1, so I need to record more courses.
Yes, definitely need more courses from you.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, hi, I'm David Markley. I'm the president of Stronghold Data. We're an MSP that's been around 35 years, and we are one of the MSPs that is now part of New Charter Technologies, a platform MSP. Got my start as a system engineer many, many years ago and worked my way up to now running the day-to-day business in the last 3 years. So really going from understanding how things work in technology to now understanding how things work with business. So it's been a journey.
Awesome. Thank you. First off, I love that no one has like the fake backgrounds on today, so we can actually see your spaces. I love that.
And I love Legos.
See, I do too. I've got the office set right there. All right, Jeremy.
Jeremy Pogue, Director of Security Services at Integris. Similar paths as everyone's talked about, starting from the bottom to the top, working the way through the MSP space over the last about 14, 15 years. Now in charge of all of the client-facing security technology at Integris. So very customer-driven mentality on it side of things.
Awesome. So like I said, we have a lot of ground to cover. We're going to start with a poll for everybody out there in the audience before we go too far down the Lego rabbit hole in the chat. So have you had to use your IR plan in the last 12 months? We're going to assume that most folks have something in place, but have you had to use it in the last 12 months? So first question for you all, when did your organization implement an IR plan? I get a variation of answers as I talk to people in hotel hallways, but when did you have to implement one? I'm gonna let anybody, it's dealer's choice.
All right,
you guys pick.
all right, I'll go. Many years ago, but I won't say we were proud of it. It was, on the heels of, hey, we have cybersecurity insurance, we need a plan. And so and this was, before ChatGPT could help us just whip something out. So it's what templates are out there and how do we get started? Very basic, but it was something that we had to kind of build off of. And so, yeah, probably 12 years ago, if I were to guess, I'd have to go look back. But yeah, quite some time. Not proud of it, but humble beginnings.
So my first IR plan was quite a few years ago, very similar to what David just said, very similar type of like, let's look on the internet, see what, a CISA and NIST have to offer. And our understanding as a market, as an organization, as a channel of what makes a good IR plan versus a checkbox IR plan, which is what most of us start out with, that was learned through a lot of hard lessons through the years. So yeah, same boat.
Yeah, and that organic growth of IR planning is kind of the similar path we've been through. Of course, coming together from multiple MSPs presented an interesting challenge of blending them together. So, being able to see, that maturity of, starting out with saying we do have a plan to we actually have something that works has been an, really interesting journey to see. I don't think anyone is proud of that first draft. So I think we've all tried to burn it somewhere.
I have to believe we were proud of it at the time because it was revolutionary, but you know, then you keep using it, and the first time you had to use it, realize probably all the gaps in it. So in the poll, we see, all right, 67% of folks have not had to use it in the last 12 months. 6% didn't have a plan when they needed one. So it's not uncommon. And we will get to some resources to help those of you who might not have a plan of any kind in place quite yet. So, Annette, when we talked a little bit in advance of this, you had an interesting perspective on IR policy versus IR plan. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people think like, I have an IR plan, that's all I need, right? Or at least that's the mentality most of us start with. And you realize over time that you need an IR plan, you need a business continuity plan, you need a backup disaster recovery plan, you need to know where all this stuff is kept, you need to know who has ownership of all these different plans that ultimately are tied together, but they're independent. And so I take it from the approach of create an IR policy first. So a policy is always your what, and your process is your how. So first create your what. What are you trying to achieve? And that way you have one document that kind of outlines all the different components of when you're in a scenario, when you're in a situation, when you're in an incident, what's at your disposal. And in your policy should also include where things live and how often these things are updated and who has responsibility of making sure that that gets done.
I'm just picturing all of these branches of this policy and all of the different areas and if-then statements and all of it that would have to be tied into that. And it makes my planning heart very happy. So how often are you reviewing these?
Best practices annually, right?
Yeah.
We all can agree with that. Like every year you check that box. Has anything changed? Any updates? Any lessons learned that we need to bring in? But I would take it a step further and not just how often do you review your IR plan, but how often are you reviewing all your lessons learned throughout the year, not just specifically around your IR plan, but when there are incidents, when there are certain portions of your business or your vendors who we rely on very heavily that are not available, what do you do? What did you do? Or what happened in the news? What did your peers go through that maybe you didn't have to go through firsthand? What lessons can you learn from all of that? So for me, it's more than just reviewing a policy and checking a box and like only listing the things that changed in my organization. It's that bigger picture of how has the world changed.
And we're similar on that front. Being our size and scale, we don't just have one plan in place, right? Plans are broken down by per department, per subset within it. So it's a total different mindset that way, because again, processes may change, people may change in those side of things. Us being on the acquisition side of things, that continuously changes the way communication and everything goes. So I would say, yes, we do it annually to check a box is what we say, but if it's not touched quarterly or more, I would say that we are missing out quite often on that side of things.
Yeah, something you mentioned too, just that what event causes you to go change your plan? You should have those in mind. What are those triggers? Is it major system changes, a new tool that you're putting in place, a new platform that you're moving to? Because all of those things impact those plans. And it doesn't take long before we're down the road and haven't realized, oh, this IR plan is now very different from what we set out 6 months ago. And so really need to keep those in mind, whether it's system changes. Somebody in the comments said, after the annual tabletop, I love that. There's so much we'll get into that, but there's so much you can learn through that. And that really should be a feedback loop right back into that plan.
I do like that that person's doing annual tabletops. That's
Yes.
huge. That's starting to become more normal, but I still talk to a whole lot of MSPs who have been asked more than once, what's a tabletop? So it's not the thing you eat supper off of. It's actually an official exercise. And then we get to talk about that. So one of my favorite questions to ask MSPs is, where does your plan live?
So ours is kept out of band. That's something that I think a lot of organizations don't think about until they're in a situation and they don't have access to their IR plan or their contact list or all the things. You have no way to communicate because that wasn't thought of ahead of time. Again, it's one of those maturity things that you learn from going through situations where you don't have access to these things, but we keep all of ours out of band as well as a separate communication plan.
Yeah, we're in the same boat. Out of band is the only way to do it. Because just like you say, I mean, it's offline. That's the first thing that goes offline, and then your plan goes out the window, and you might not have even needed to have one at that point.
Yeah, we've actually got both. So there's a publicly available one on our intranet, but we've got that offline plan just because, like you said, if you lose access, that's exactly the time you need that plan. So it better be handy.
Yes, and previously, I would say probably before COVID, where so many of us went remote, it used to be printed out and have it somewhere centrally locked away where only certain people had access to it. But with so many people working from home now, I think out of band is the new printed out.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was the correct answer, all of you, as we knew it would be. But
Yes.
I still talk to a whole lot of folks who are like, well, it's on this server. And I'm like, okay, I've ransomed you. Now what? And even down to the contact list, Nat, you hit it perfectly, that having that list of phone numbers, of ways to get a hold of people, because if all of that lives in your Outlook contacts, like there's a lot of danger when we become so reliant on technology. How many phone numbers do you have memorized anymore? So knowing, how to get a hold of people is really important. So how many tabletops a year are you running? Sorry, tabletop exercises, not supper eating tables. How many tabletop exercises are you running every year?
Do you mean internally or with clients? That's a totally different number.
Ooh, let's go both of those numbers.
So we do it quarterly at Kraft Kennedy, which for us, we'd use a lot of different interesting scenarios because we have a much more mature infrastructure. So a lot of the typical scenarios would die very quickly and we'd have a very short tabletop. So I want it to be more meaningful. So we do things that are more interesting. With clients, we do it with every client gets a tabletop every year. And I also do tabletops for a variety of I did a tabletop yesterday for a local CISO group. I did a tabletop workshop for GTIA during ChannelCon. So walking MSPs through how to have a good tabletop. So tabletop is basically my middle name at this point.
That's a lot.
That is. Yeah, we do internally monthly, just inside of certain departments, and break it down because again, it's one of those at size and scale. They're not going to be everybody all at once on a lot of times. Obviously, we have larger ones that cover that. So there's, just like Net said, a lot of difference in the type of scenarios that we run through on that side, and different people in each one. So, because again, it's always, someone's on vacation when they happen, or, someone is driving, or, you just can't reach the people at the time that it happens. So we make sure we have people sub in and out on that side. And then we have clients that have them, we have clients that don't. It's a maturity level on that side. I would love to say that we had them to everyone, but it's just not feasible at this point. There's some businesses that, can't even spell it, like you said, Becky. They don't understand the urgency or need of it. And then we have others that, once, twice a year. So, I would say organizationally wise, we probably do hundreds, but it depends on the client specifically.
Yeah, for us, there's a measure of annual and quarterly for internal, and for clients, we have a mix of pretty diverse clients, so not any one set. So then there's not a lot of heavily regulated industries that we're dealing with. So we're the ones kind of pushing clients to do that, speaking to the business risks. almost selling it, in a way as something they really need to do. But annual is the target for clients as well. And we even provide them some starter kits, for tabletops. Shout out to, the Huntress Hacker Hunter board. That one's great, just to get them started. Once they get kind of a taste of that, they actually see the benefit. It's really hard for them to get them to sign up that first one. Once they've gone through that process, though, it just kind of feeds itself. So they're like, oh man, we learned so much. It really exposes a lot of questions that they don't have answers to yet. And so it's been really beneficial. And we're even using it as a prospecting tool. We go out into different markets and invite people, just, hey, let's do this as a community, trying to give back and educate, because again, it just opens eyes that people aren't thinking about that. They're focused on their business or organization. They're not thinking about risk in terms of cybersecurity other than what's advertised or they see on LinkedIn, all the spammy kind of stuff that we all cringe at. And so this is a really actionable thing that really gets them to see what they should be focused on.
So before we go too much further, Hunter Hacker board games. So we're getting more printed. We ran out of the first batch. For those of you who might not be aware, we actually built a Monopoly style incident response tabletop exercise designed for MSPs to play with their clients. So instead of talking about tools or how you technically respond to an incident, it focuses on the importance of plans. So each player is assigned a company profile that tells them, yes, no, I have a business continuity plan, I have an incident response plan. So they understand the importance of engaging with you on those plans, and then you get some additional revenue to help them build those plans out. So yes, it's like backdoors and breaches, but it is definitely less technical. Anything that I help build is not going to be technical. Backdoors and breaches is great for internal, but when if you're trying to play it with a less than technical client, it could be a bit daunting. So happy to get you guys game boards out. Just shoot me an email and I will get you on the wait list. Like I said, we're getting more printed because they went very fast. So becky.teal@huntress.com, and I'm happy to get you on the list for that. So on that note, there's a whole other set of incident response games, IR games. And MSP Bob Miller took another game that Huntress worked with Matt Lee from PAX 8 on to build a couple years ago called MSP's Worst Day. And Jeremy, to your point, including other departments, the game includes a role for CFO, so to help determine which client should come back on quicker, things like that. So irgames.com.
It's irgame.ai.
Thank you, irgames.ai. Definitely
IR game.
Game.
Sorry, game.
Perfect. Thank
Only
you.
one.
Only one. That's right. There is only one Bob. irgame.ai, fantastic resource as well. When you first started building your incident response exercises internally, where did you get inspiration, or did you just kind of build it based on your knowledge of incidents?
So for me, I think we all, when you start doing tabletops, you start with the basics. Ransomware, business email compromise, takes you down this path, blah, 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 blah. But I think as you get more mature in doing the tabletops, clients really kind of like ransomware. For most clients, it's too technical for them. They understand it at a high level, but it's hard to get them in a tabletop to focus on the business side if you keep talking about ransomware, because that's so technical. So pivoting to talking about some of the other threats, like insider threat, supply chain, I mean, you name it, there's a million different ways. Deep fakes, clients love it when I do deep fake with them because it's interesting and it's new and it's like psychology is involved. And they like going through scenarios that are a little separated from just the two most common. And you can do combinations, of course. That's usually what I end up doing. I usually do at least two threat vectors taken advantage of in a scenario just to keep it more interesting, keep them on their toes. Wait, we're not done yet. But I found that doing that, I got a lot more attention and I was able to keep that conversation at the business level and keeping the big thing for tabletops for me, especially doing first tabletop with a client, is they're expecting it to be technical because that's what they think of. Oh, I'll call my MSP. That's my IR plan, right? We've all heard that one. But for me, it's educating the client through a series of questions and scenarios So they see that it's really about business decision making. And the majority of incident response is about how they handle it from a business perspective. And even though there'll be technical people on most tabletop calls, they don't get a chance to speak because what they say is not relevant. And I summarize it very quickly and move on.
Yeah, and it's forcing that thinking out of the box, right? I mean, that's what you want to do. I remember, very clearly at this point, like 10 years ago, we did a tabletop and we called it a pandemic test. And everyone was like, ooh, zombies and joking around. And then COVID hit and they were like, hey, we actually planned for this, And so it's one of those that a lot of times it does seem silly, it's role playing. I mean, it's, acting out. It seems silly at times, but then whenever you get to turn around and see it, come to fruition and see the actual need for it, it changes people's perspective. So thinking outside the box, right? Everybody's heard ransomware, they think, oh, it's, that side of things, but making sure you do throw those variables in, those differences. And, I love the fact that there's so many games coming out there because just like Net said, most of us technical people are not very creative, and we're going to go with just something we've seen and we're familiar with. So when we present it to the customer side of things, we're like, okay, you got ransomware, you got, it's just very boring and bland, and everyone tunes out. But, like I said, when you start throwing those fun little variables in, making them stop and think, okay, you got abducted by aliens, what are you going to do now? And it doesn't necessarily have to be practical, but it gets that mindset shift, that thinking through the whole process, how we're going to work. So I love that process.
Yeah, just to tack onto that, one of the first ones that I did was just got some of our team in a room at the whiteboard and drew out infrastructure. This was back when, private cloud was really big. We had a sizable investment in that, and just started drawing some X's on things like, all right, this failed, now what? And so not even from a security mindset per se, but just failure, scenarios, just getting people to start thinking and exercising those muscles. One, also, I remember pulling some good ideas because Jeremy, like you said, we're not always the most creative people. And so like need some inspiration sometimes. There was an old Twitter account, maybe it still exists, but it was just every day or two, they'd just post some random bad thing that could happen that could have been a scenario for tabletop. And I would use that occasionally too.
I like that. I talked to one Canadian MSP that instead of planning them and putting them on calendars at all, she just walks out and yells and calls them fire drills. And she'll just force everybody into impromptu exercise. And I was like, that sounds awful and really fun to watch.
I like that. I don't know that my team would like them, but I
was
like
gonna
that.
say every time you come outside, they all just
Cringe.
quietly step away from you. Yeah, so all right, so we're internal. Let's talk a bit about external or building these with clients. Let's put up the second poll, and we're going to ask you, do your customers and clients have IR plans? So how do you sell this to a client? Whether you include it in their annual services or charge extra for it, how do you convince your clients to come along in this journey with you, or how did you as you started this?
So we offer left of boom cybersecurity, so security advising, fractional CISO, which is different than vCISO, which means that there's a huge business component to it, as well as doing assessments and pen testing. So when somebody signs up with us to get fractional CISO services, IR plan review and or creation comes with it. Doing tabletops at least twice a year comes with it. Doing a review of all their policies comes with it. So it's not an option. If you want us to advise you, you have to be fully bought into what we're doing, because we don't do it a little bit. You can't buy just this. You have to get everything, because there's no company that doesn't need every part of security. Said it in a more positive way, every company needs every part of security. So if you let your clients pick and choose what parts of security, they usually make that decision based on A, tools, because they understand tools, it's less theoretical, and B, finance, right? What's most cost effective for them? And there's so much that happens left of boom that is not based on tools. It's based on business, understanding how the business works, where the risk is, not just security risk, but also other risks to the business, like what their competition is doing, right? These are things that matter to the business owner. And those should be factored in to an IR plan, right? And do a tabletop around it, right? Do a tabletop where their competitor beat them to the punch of something they've been working on for 3 years, right? That's hugely impactful, and it's completely not technical, and they don't feel like you're selling them something at the end of it.
David, you want to?
Yeah. So we're a managed IT services provider. So that's really kind of everything involved with that, which is always adding more every day, as Jeremy, I'm sure, knows too. But we don't want to have any clients that aren't willing to take on, like Ned is saying, some security aspects. Now, we're not saying you have to have every single thing on day one. We've got a lot of clients in different parts of their journey. And so we kind of look at ourselves as like stewards and kind of guiding them into the right direction. But there are some basic things that we say everybody needs, certain amounts. That we're not doing a la carte services. It's either fully managed or co-managed is the two ways we go to market. And so everyone's got access to a certain security tool stack that we feel confident in having a client, because I don't want that liability if they're not willing to do those things either. And so we've got a starter IR plan. We have starter templates for different components, but we're very clear we can't fill this out for you, because a lot of clients say, hey, I've got Stronghold, I'm good. No, that's not the point. That's not what we're doing here. Yes, I have a great team. Yes, we do great work, but I can't answer these questions for you just like a cybersecurity questionnaire. I can't do that for you. I can advise you on what I would focus on and what I'd look at. And so we try to help them just get, I call it the starter kit, so they don't feel like they're starting from scratch, and we go through that advising. We have a partner company that goes very deep into security program, and so we bring them in when they're ready for that more maturity. And so we kind of tag team, those aspects of it. And that's how we've approached it.
And David, we're very similar on that side, right? It really matches that maturity level of the client side of things. I would love to say that we had them across the board. Everybody had them, they knew exactly where they were stored. They were in the bedside table, right? I would love to be in that scenario, but the reality of it is, it's that journey along, dragging the customer along, right? We're not waiting for them, right? We're dragging them through this process. And so a lot of times it's a initial, advice on it, then it's kind of like dropping a hint, delivering them to their doorstep, whatever it is, and kind of dragging them through that process. And so we have some that, like I mentioned, great, we do the IR tabletops, we've got the whole plan, we've got it all figured out. Then we've got others that are just like, yeah, I mean, I literally have customers that are a size and scope and, maturity that you're like, hey, you have something going on. And they're like, well, it's 4 o'clock on Friday. Call me on Monday, and that's their IR plan, right? You can't mess with my weekend. So it's that matching that maturity. But from what we've all seen is that maturity level, instead of it getting harder to reach, it's actually coming lower down to that lower side. So the need for that plan is hitting smaller and smaller businesses, less and less maturity levels. So where it might have been a maturity level 3 that needed an IR plan 2 or 3 years ago, now it's down to that 1, 2 maturity level. So continuing to push that and force that maturity level to grow so that it can, start closing these gaps faster.
And if I could just follow up on that, I love what Jeremy said about meeting them where they are. I think that's hugely important. Like, you can't go in on day one and say, we're going to do all these changes right now, right? Their heads would explode. Your heads would explode trying to do all those changes. So meet them where they are. And yes, everybody should have an IR plan, but start simple, right? Don't scare the pants off of them, giving them a 50-page IR plan that they need to memorize. Start simple. And every year when you review the plan, after you do your tabletops, mature their plan. Take them on that journey. And even if you were able to get approval to do everything on day one, that won't be the end of it, because everything changes and you'll have to make adjustments down the road. So make sure you're having that expectation conversation that this is a journey. I'm here to guide you through it. We're going to start here, but I want to get you here.
I like that in all of this, though, you're making it personal. You're talking to them about their businesses. There's some evaluation that has to go in, because I don't think that most businesses would identify as immature. So kind of figuring out where they sit on your predetermined scale there, but also making some of it personal, especially when it comes to the tabletops. This has to be something they care about, or it is. It's just another IT exercise that I don't understand. And no one likes to feel like the dumbest person in the room. Like, that's a really painful way to try and educate, is, beating them into it. So Dragging, absolutely, drag all day, but force feeding doesn't always work and is probably usually going to be met with some opposition. So for any of you who do not have an IR plan internally, we have a template in the resource page for you. It is just a checklist template. To Net's point, it is the very bare bones. It's a checklist. But we did build it with Solus, so a leading IR firm, got their blessing on most of it. So it's a starting point for you. And then for those of you who are not doing incident response plans with your clients, there's also a template in there for you. That one's a Word document. It's not branded. You can take it, you can make it your own, but it's a good starting point for that first basic. It's definitely not 50 pages. I think it's 4 though. Like it's not tiny. It's a pretty robust plan, but it is very fill in the blank. And we did get that one reviewed by an insurance company to make sure that it checked the box for what they were looking for, because cyber insurance companies, if you haven't seen it yet, that is starting to be a requirement on your customers' renewals. They have to have a plan, and they're going to think call my MSP is enough, and it's not. So both of those are in the resource tab for you. I wanted to give that a little bit early so folks had time to remember to go in and download those before we get too much further. So when we talk a bit, oh, I like this. So we had somebody put in a question about, I always want to hear how leaders talk about governance and fiduciary responsibility when it comes to building incident response and disaster recovery into their business process. So that culture and business decision anatomy, sorry, is also maturing. How are you talking to your folks about governance and fiduciary responsibility?
Yeah, no, I think
Tough
that's
one.
Go ahead,
Go
Jeremy.
ahead. Okay, I'll start it. Growing up in the MSP space in Caltech, which was around banking and organizations around that, a lot of financial institutions, fiduciary responsibility was something that was very prevalent in those conversations. But it's not just the fiduciary side of things. As leaders of organizations, you have to remember that there's the personal aspect to it as well, right? You're responsible for the livelihood of every person in your bubble. And so making sure those conversations are very clear that this is not just to make sure we know who to call on a Friday night when something breaks, but making sure that those people are getting, paid, those people are getting, to take care of their families, making sure those type of things are part of that. And then just making sure that everybody in their line of business is covered. So it is definitely a leading conversation for those and helping, drag those people along. I don't want to write this. Well, have you thought about making sure everyone's paid? What's going to happen when you can't get payroll out? Oh, well, maybe I should have an IR plan for that. So sometimes those conversations are the ones that crack, or that straw that breaks that resistance through the process.
Totally echo that, Jeremy. That's similarly how we get into those business owners, those decision makers' minds, that if they hear cybersecurity, incident response, they just check out. It's like, oh, I got somebody else for that. But once they have an incident, every incident I've helped walk someone through, the key thing that is on their mind is my people, my team. How do I take care of, the folks here? Customers too, but even more importantly, the team members at home. And so, yeah, how do we pay them? How do we make sure that we've got access to bank accounts, and just all those things that will weigh heavily on their minds if they haven't already decided, here's how we will do that. And so great ways to do that, diagramming cash flow, diagramming their revenue streams. It goes a little beyond maybe the IR plan, but that really gives us insights on how to advise them on what matters. What's the key systems, not just from a business continuity and disaster recovery, but if you are hit, if everything's, ransomware or whatever, worst case scenario, where do we start so that we're all on the same page with that? So talking about business, talking about their people, talking about what really matters to those decision makers, best way to break down that wall. Whereas if you come at them with hey, it's time to do the IR plan and talk about cybersecurity, you've already lost them.
Absolutely. I could just say ditto here and end it. But I would add that I think ingraining yourself into the business and how the business operates cannot be overstated. I think this is a key that I think a lot of MSPs skip. They're like, oh, I have a great relationship with the owner. Great. What does the company do? Oh, they sell widgets. How do they sell widgets? Oh, no, they sell widgets. And like, it's very superficial. but really getting into how the business runs, how money moves through the organization, what is their growth plan, where is their friction, where's their treasure, what are the fears that they have of their happening to their business or around their business, right? And understanding all of that, the business owner starts seeing you as, as somebody who has the same passion they have for the thing they've spent so much of their life building, the thing that's very important to them, usually one of the most important things outside of family to them. And if you show that interest of understanding how that business runs and all the ins and outs of it, that's when you become that, I hate that phrase, overused, trite phrase of trusted advisor, but that's what it really means. It's not, you sell widgets, buy my stuff. It's really getting to that point of having the business owner believe that you care about their business because you really care about their business.
Yeah, just to really quickly tack onto that, I love it. Trust advisor, yes, it's kind of like digital transformation or now AI. We've heard it, we're kind of tired of hearing it, but it is so impactful. And there's, I think, 7 estimated seats. If you kind of go around that advisory table that any decision maker is going to look at, there's CPA, there's legal, and that list. We should be one of those if we're really truly close to our customers. And doing that means, just like when that said, like learning the business, not just, yeah, they're in this industry, have a good day, really understanding, watching news, talking to them about what's going on in their world, really getting deep with that client relationship. And having that seat at the table means you're not on the menu. As somebody said, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. We've got to be really close to our clients to continue to build that relationship, not just for sales, not just for our own growth, but really to understand where they're going and meet them there, or sometimes beat them there, and make sure that we've got that relevancy 5 years from now, 10 years from now that we need.
You've earned that trusted advisor title then. And Ned, we talked about that on our prep call. It's one of my least favorite. I put it akin to, AI and so many other terms, that thought leadership that have been
synergy.
Overused.
That's another
synergy. We'll come back around to that. So there's all those weird buzzwords, but actually earning that seat at your customers' tables as they are looking at their business plans, I think is really important. So, Jan had a really good point, though, back to the incident response element of this, that any question asked in a tabletop should always ask the responder, what does your plan say to do? So I think I didn't want to miss that. One important element, that as you're doing a tabletop exercise, this isn't a free-for-all where people can just answer what they would do. If they have a plan in place, a tabletop is really designed to test that plan and not just go off
I would beg to
script.
differ on that.
Okay. I love it.
A tabletop should not be a test of your IR plan. Tabletop has to be a test of the organization's cyber resilience, which then those lessons learned can be built into the IR plan. So when there's an incident, it's stacked knowledge. So I never ask them, what does your IR plan say to do? I want them to bring it up. I would reference my IR plan at some point. I usually do 5-day scenarios. They need to mention, I would reference my IR plan. If they don't, they actually get dinged in the after action report for not mentioning their IR plan, for not referencing it. So I don't want to tell them to do it because I'm not going to be there when they have an incident. They have to know to do it. They have to think about it. And if they get dinged in the after action report, they should make sure that they don't get dinged the second time.
Oh, I like that. That's kind of mean and I like it.
It's not mean, it's realistic, right? And we do tabletops to help train people and prepare them for when incidents happen. So the more realistic you can be, and the less, I hate to say least helpful, but you're there to facilitate, not to guide. So that's the tack that I take. I don't lead them. I'll ask some questions, like, so-and-so, what would you do? So-and-so, do you agree with that? But I don't lead them to where they should go. But at the end of a tabletop, at the end of day 5, if there are specific topics they haven't touched on, then I'll mention it, and they usually get dinged in the after action report that they didn't bring them up. One of the big ones a lot of people miss is HR, right? If the incident is caused by human, let's say, mistake, we don't want to necessarily say people do these things on purpose, but usually if the incident is initiated by the action of a user, will there be HR consequences, right? That's something that needs to be thought of ahead of time. And that's not something that necessarily would be in your IR plan. That wouldn't usually be in the employee handbook. So that's usually an area that I will bring up, like, are there any HR situations that we need to handle in this? But other than that, I don't guide them.
I like that. David, Jeremy, anything that you're doing differently or the same?
I was taking notes. That's what I was doing.
Yeah, no,
Right?
I like
was
that.
amazing.
Maybe we're too kind, in some of the conversations. But yeah, I mean, it's always learning. So as long as we're not stopping them from learning something through this, to me, that's the point. And it should be, again, that feedback loop of, okay, we went through a scenario. What did we learn that's new? There's always something, usually many things. And a lot of times it's too many. And like, what's the top five? Let's work on those. But it should be feeding back into that IR plan. But I agree, like there should be this awareness of you've got to be able to think. You've got to be able to use reasoning and logic and understanding of the scenario. That's why you have your team at this end client business. That's why, we have folks that are involved so we can work through this process. Nothing will ever follow this plan to a T. There's always something that comes up that is unaccounted for, just like we have in tabletop scenarios. It's not like we can scenario this to death and then we've got our perfect plan. It doesn't work that way. And so we do need to have that awareness of, you got to think about it and be able to respond the right way. IR plan gives them a framework. Where's the safe lanes? How do we know we're marching towards the same direction? And then for other things, you've got legal and breach counsel.
Oh, those are topics for next year's Fireside Chats, because that's a whole other scenario and situation. So, because next month's topic is around cyber insurance, I want to ask each of you, final kind of question here. Are you reviewing insurance requirements with your customers? Like, David, you said earlier, you don't fill out the application for them, you do it with them.
Right. Yeah. So, we're advising in terms of, hey, you do have this in place and here's the reports that show this. So we're giving them feedback and helping them through this, but we do not fill out questionnaires. We do not fill out any insurance paperwork for them.
Well,
And
we're
we've got
not allowed to.
Correct. Yeah.
We're
no
not
one
the
should be,
ones
just to be
signing
clear,
it.
no one should be. Yeah.
We
But
can
there
help
are
advise. Yeah.
there are MSPs that I have seen do this, and just please don't.
Don't do it. Don't do it. So sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you
No,
a second
you're good.
ago. But one of the things that I advise my clients to do is to reach out to their cyber insurance provider and some competitors if they want to get competitive quotes at least 6 months in advance before their policy is coming due. Because so many times they wait till the last minute, they receive the questionnaire from the cyber provider, and then they turn around to the MSP like, we've got all these no's. Help me do this so we can get better pricing. Like, your lack of planning does not constitute an emergency on my part, right? Let's plan. Let's have this conversation. And it's much easier to do 6 months in advance when you have some runway to verify things, make some changes to get some of those better results from that questionnaire.
Yeah, one thing real quick to tack on, the standardization that we're generally doing in the MSP world, we're generally sticking with a certain set of vendors for the certain set of solutions that we need. I would encourage you, if you don't have that relationship with an insurance broker, provider, to build those, because that's really going to help you standardize on that too. You're going to understand better what is required, how to kind of work through this with the client. And a lot of times, again, if you're that trusted advisor, they're asking you, hey, who should I reach out to if they don't have an existing relationship? And so we've been fortunate to have really good strategic partnerships with some of those kinds of companies, things that we don't do, but we don't want to just say, well, go talk to the market and see what happens. We want to be more curated, than that. And so we've got that list, kind of say, hey, this is who we can talk to. Let's set up a call and work through those things with them. But yeah, we are always encouraging them, like, hey, go find out what is really required for your business. I understand enough of your business to guide you with this. You know fully what's needed from a liability standpoint, protection, all that.
Yeah, we're in the same realm, right? I mean, we definitely do not do the filling out. A lot of advising through the process. It's one of those that we almost require for all of our clients to have on the insurance side. I love the fact that you guys are doing a whole other fireside on it, because it is one of those places that, making sure that's done correctly, making sure it's done, accurately, to make sure that whenever something does happen, your plan doesn't have to include a very large personal check. So it's all of that process that we're involved with as well.
That's so yes, I thank you. That's one of my favorite things, because I have talked to MSPs that are like, oh no, I fill those out. Or on the equally bad, I don't even look at it. It's like, then your customer's probably checking boxes for stuff they probably don't have. So there's a happy medium there of doing it with them. I love the idea of 6 months in advance to give you ample opportunity also to know what might be coming on next year's renewal in time to add those services, to do those things to help folks get the absolute best pricing. So as I said, next month we're joined by our friends at Yukon. They joined us a couple years ago every quarter to do cyber insurance AMAs. They used to be called Fifth Wall, if that rings a bell. And so to do cyber insurance AMAs this year, we're going to be talking a bit about the insurance panels and how they make those decisions on what is and is not approved. So should be a good one, but please bring your burning questions, because my favorite thing is to throw really tough questions at Reed. So bring those to us next month to help us end out the year. Net, David, Jeremy, thank you all so much for joining today and for sharing your expertise. I really appreciate your time. And for those of you who celebrate, have a wonderful Thanksgiving week next week. May your travels be safe if you're doing crazy Thanksgiving travel, and hope the airports are kind to you. And otherwise, we will see you as we get a little bit closer to Christmas. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
you.